Okay, this is 5/25/21. This is the Finance Committee of Council. And present are committee members Schuman and Kelly, along with councilpersons Glassburn, Williamson, Limpert. Council President Jones is online. We also have Gary Kopfer, Keith Sperling, Justin Tyler from, and Mr. Rewin is also with you. Is that correct, Mr. Tyler? Okay. Justin Tyler and Kyle Berwin. Rewin?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
It's Justin Alme, and he's with Tyler. That's just like the hyphen. It's just like the company.
Oh, Justin.
Just trying to confuse you.
Tyler. I got you. Okay. From Tyler.
You got it.
I knew that. In my head, I knew it. Okay. Councilwoman Heeman is also present. Okay, we've got 3 things on the agenda tonight. We can go ahead and start with the 2021-34. That is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a software as service agreement with Tyler Technologies to provide cloud-based hosting and related computer services and declaring an emergency. This was held in committee and pulled off the agenda last week. Wait a minute, Mr. Garreau is here too. Director Garreau. Okay, we can, Gary, did you want to start? You want to say anything?
Well, the one open question that I just wanted to verify, I think Councilman Williamson had asked, was if this agreement is at the end of the old Munis or the current Munis contract, or does it supersede it? And it does supersede it, so it replaces our Munis contract. Prior to that, we've been amending the Munis contract, but this is a separate agreement and it replaces the current Munis contract that we have.
Gary, you have anything else you want to bring up?
No, that was the only open question that was left unanswered thoroughly, I felt. And I have not received any questions in the week since. So I was hoping that we would have questions, get it resolved, and be able to move forward. So
okay.
All up to you guys.
All right. Mr. Kelly, you have any questions? You good? Okay. Anybody on council? Mr. Glassburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around exactly what are the savings long-term of this and how that, what buckets that falls under. I understand that we don't have the equipment, but I mean, the numbers sound relatively close to me. And so that's why I want to make sure I understand this.
Director Kopfer, you want to go over it again?
Yes. Oh, I don't know what that was. Anyway, the main difference, I mean, I think we discussed all the benefits of being hosted versus not. It's, you know, it's the responsibility for security of our data, the hardware costs, and the IT time, I think, is significant, and that we're hedging against that. You know, they're always going to have experienced people who are experienced in the Tyler products that we have, helping us with our hardware and our upgrades when we have to integrate the new software and the hardware. So those are things that that keep adding up every year. So each year you're going to have that derived benefit. Have I put a quantifiable cost other than, 20-some thousand for equipment a year, and some IT time, but really that IT time is very insignificant to the dollar value that I had estimated when we had talked about it at the budget. And really we're saving and gaining a lot in the quality of IT. Not that our IT department isn't qualified, but this isn't their area of expertise, and we have people that are experts in these products. And the other is that I guess disaster recovery is already done. I know we're working on one, but they have one that's already implemented, so that's a time savings, and it adds efficiency and effectiveness in the case of an emergency where we do have to recover our data. And the difference is only a few $1,000s when you factor in the hardware and the IT time a year. So it's minimal.
Go ahead, Mr. Glassman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the contract, there's a provision that says that travel is not included. Is that travel in terms of if we have issues, they travel to us? Is that travel to something else? What do cities typically spend on travel related to this?
Do you want me to take that, Carrie?
Yes, please.
All right. Yeah. So in this case, there really wouldn't be any travel. There is a project manager that's going to be assigned to this project to help with the migration of your data from your current servers to the cloud. And so that person kind of falls under our services or implementation umbrella, which could, in certain circumstances, involve travel, but in our case, it wouldn't. So it's just kind of standard terminology on the contract when services are provided or included in the contract. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You got it.
Okay, I saw another hand up. Ms. Heeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Carrie, we've been kind of working towards this for 3 years, I think now. This is our 3rd year. Is that, or maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's only 2. But so we sort of straddle, right? In our budget, we've got some money over here and then some money moving toward this project. How will our budget be adjusted, when we move forward with this? Is this the last year that we'll be doing 2 pieces in the budget? Can you help me understand that?
Mr. Chair, the budget was fully budgeted to go to Tyler hosted. So that is what's in the budget. There's not 2 different things in the budget where, oh, we're going to do this and we can take this out of the budget, because we budgeted to go Tyler hosted, and we've been trying to upgrade to a higher in the Munis software. This is our 3rd year, and our server failed this last time. And we would need to get a new server to be able to do that. So that is what has been failing, and we have not tried to go Tyler hosted yet. This is the 1st year, and it was in the budget at the beginning of the year.
Go ahead, you got another question?
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so we are buying hardware in this budget as well as Tyler hosting then. I guess that was my confusion even at the budget time, right? As I really thought I saw, a bunch of equipment being purchased and then, moving to the cloud. So I was still unclear about that.
There is no, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. There is no hardware currently in the budget for Tyler or for Munis. It is, but what council had asked was a comparison. If we didn't go to Tyler hosted, what we would have, and we would have to purchase hardware and have IT time involved to do it if we stayed client hosted, which would be in our server. So that would be what you saw in the presentation, but that was not formal budget. It was just in the discussion.
Any other, Mr. Glassburn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So not so much with North Olmsted as an organization, but I've seen in others where you contract with an entity, they have expertise, and at the beginning it seems like the right thing, and it may still be the right thing long term, but you get into almost a proprietary relationship where 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you essentially have to stay with that product and have no other choice. How does this unwind if it ever has to unwind?
Mr. Alme, you want to take that?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so in the SaaS model, your access and your ownership of your data is still yours, just as it is if you were self-hosted. So there would be no difference, if you will, in that relationship. So if you decided to move back to self-hosted or to another software provider altogether, you would have a data dump out of our system at your disposal. And really that's any time, whether you're transitioning or not. You have access to your data at any time. We don't own your data. You still own your data. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
If we were to clean house and take everything out, is there a cost involved in that?
There, not on our end. So we would do a straight, just extract everything and give it to you in probably a SQL format. So you have your entire database available to you. On your end, certainly there may be costs associated with it and what you do with that data. But from our end, to give it to you would be no charge.
Okay, any other questions from council? Ms. Williamson? Ms. Williamson?
Mr. Chair, it sometimes takes a while for my microphone to turn back on. I may have missed it in the exhibit, but is there any kind of clause in there that says that the other contract is null and void once this one's signed? Or that this replaces the other contract? Where is that in this exhibit? Because I must have breezed over it.
Director, to you.
I think Justin might be able to find it quicker, but it does say it in there.
Yeah, I'll take a look here, see if I can find that.
Thank you. While you're looking for that, Council President, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's actually similar to Councilwoman Williamson's question, in that I was going to ask if the law department had the opportunity to look at this contract and compare it to the 2012 contract and to notify council as to what the changes were between the two.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director.
I have not undertaken the analysis between the two contracts. I've seen the contract, but I haven't undertaken the analysis to compare and contrast the two. I would say that while Mr. Alme Tyler is looking for that particular provision, I would say that we discussed that, Carrie Kopfer and I discussed that today, and in my responsibility to ensure that the contract is in a good form that protects the city of North Olmsted, I would never approve a contract like this unless it was made perfectly clear in the contract, if it's not already in there, that this is a successor contract and if the prior contract is terminated, there's no responsibility to the city of North Olmsted under that prior agreement. So I have not gone through and modeled them next to each other. To that extent, I have not done that.
But you have read this particular contract, and
Yeah, I've seen the contract. That's not to say that I wouldn't propose some potential changes. I mean, it's a municipal form contract, so it's going to eliminate most of the provisions that I would typically find objectionable. Venue, jurisdiction, indemnification clauses, things like that are the kind of things that I would typically object to when I review these. You do this long enough and you start to see the same thing over and over again, so you know exactly what you're hunting for. And those are the types of clauses that I don't agree to anyway. So typically the negotiation process really begins in earnest after the contract's approved. Otherwise, I could spend a lot of time reviewing contracts that don't get approved. So typically I'm familiar with it. I've reviewed it. I have it, but the negotiation process typically can begin after that to eliminate some of those objectionable provisions if they're in there. But I haven't put old versus new to see what's in there because I intend to eliminate the old contract altogether by virtue of what this is supposed to do.
okay. Ms. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question's directed to our law director. Mr. Garreau, if you do find things after the passage of this ordinance, would we have to bring this back to council then to amend portions of the contract?
No. I mean, every now and again you'll see the contract language that's included. The law director will negotiate to a form and substance that's not adverse to the city. You'll see that type of language in there. I mean, I'm not gonna if for instance some of the provisions are flat out not lawful, we can't sign them. The indemnification clauses, then they pop up. You can't have them. They're not permitted. The venue and jurisdiction clauses we typically would eliminate. So no, you don't have to bring it back. It's kind of part of my responsibility to ensure that particular contract, if there's something in there that we find that would be objectionable or not to the advantageous, not necessarily advantageous to the city, then we can work on it at that point. I mean, we do it all the time.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Director, what if there's additional language that, wasn't in the prior contract that it just pops into this one now? Council wouldn't know that until you reviewed?
Yeah, I mean, here, look, the way this reads now, any contract executed by the mayor shall be in a form and substance consistent with the provision of this resolution and be approved by the director of law. We typically, I'm not going to add anything that's adverse to the city of North Olmsted. These are issues that I would find that if I find something going through it, negotiation process, that we would be used to protect the city of North Olmsted. I'm not going to agree to some language that I would find harmful. I mean, I know that the contract is going to be a successor. We know that the typical provisions, if they're, and again, it's a municipal form contract, you generally don't have them in there. I don't, off the top of my head, I can go through and review it. I've reviewed it, but like I said, this has been around for 3 weeks. If there's a provision that's a concern, we certainly negotiate it and discuss it, but we don't have to necessarily bring it back because you can rest assured that whatever I'm working on is going to be to protect the citizens and you. It's not something where I would negotiate dollar amounts. I don't look for the scope of services that are being provided. There's generally the types of things that might come up in the process would be those that would be adverse to the city of North Olmsted that we would work off of. So I mean, I consider these more the secondary provisions versus any type of a primary scope of service, cost of service. I would never get involved in those types of things because that's not really what I'm looking for.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Director, I didn't insinuate that you were going to do that at all. So, I'm just asking, but I'm more concerned that while the intent is to this contract would supersede the prior one, it doesn't appear that language is in the contract because I don't think anyone has found it yet. Again, I may have missed it, but that's quite concerning to me, and I'd like to see that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have no, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Thank you. I think I lost you. Mr. Schuman, you're muted. There you go.
Go ahead.
Look, I can, the committee certainly here at this point can say, Mr. Garreau, make sure that and add any contract language that ensures that any other obligations under any other prior contract shall be terminated upon the execution of this contract, or concluded, I should say, depending upon the start date. Sure, I'll be happy to make sure that's in there. If that's a concern to the council, to the extent that it's not in there, you direct me to do so. I'm going to do it anyways. But if you want to include that in any motion to approve, if that's the case, we will make absolutely certain that is in there and perfectly clear in the form of any contract that would be executed. Be happy to, if you want to put that in the motion. If there's a motion to approve that the contract include a termination clause of any prior obligations, then that's certainly fine by me. I have no objection to that. I was going to do it anyways, but if you want just to be clear, that's perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Would you be more comfortable, Councilwoman? Would you be more comfortable if we did that, or?
Absolutely, yes. While I know that there's gentlemen agreements, there's
No, I understand.
times that, I just want to protect everybody, so thank you.
All right. Any further questions? Okay. All right, then at this time, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we recommend 2021-34 with the addition of wording canceling the previous contract.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
the motion could include language to ensure that the prior contract obligations are concluded. And if you also want to include language and something to the effect of, and that the contract is in a form and substance that is approved by the Director of Law and not adverse to the residents of the City of North Homestead. So if you want to take my language and roll it into a motion, I'll be happy to make sure that language is included.
Okay, what he said, that was my motion. And I asked for a second.
Second, and aye.
Aye. Okay, great.
Mr. Schuman, you're muted.
Good. I was making a stupid joke, so it doesn't matter. So thank you very much, everybody. All right, so we have two more pieces on the agenda. Real quick, 2021-35 is an ordinance to make and transfer appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the City of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency. And you should have in your possession a copy of both the amended and the amended with the explanations. Director Kopfer, do you want to go through these?
Yes. I'm going through the explanations because to me that's real the meat there. In the Department of Human Resources, we've added $6,000 to contractual services because we're doing additional COVID testing for our senior center employees, and it's being tracked separately for potential reimbursement from COVID monies, but it's potential reimbursement. Then senior services and engineering, there was just error in the pulling of it for the ordinance originally. So it's not that anything really changed other than it's now in the right amount, the correcting for adjustment posted to the wrong line in the ordinance level. So that's an in and out. And then there's $10,000 in the contractual services for the Butternut Ridge Pocket Park. There have been money appropriated last year for the engineering and design for the Pocket Park, and not all of it was encumbered at the time. So, and I didn't carry it forward, and we didn't realize that it didn't get carried forward because this is I think it's the construction management piece of it that's essential. And so we need to add the $10,000 for the engineering services for the Pocket Park. The $60,000 in police is in wages. It's for their shift differential weekend bonus. And I think we have shift differential in there, but weekend bonus is a new element in the contract that was signed at the end of last year. And it was not factored into the salary and benefit projection. And it was not adjusted for the final appropriations. And it was missed by everyone. I apologize, but we need to ensure that there's money in there to pay their weekend bonus. And then the amended one that you just got today is $6,000 in contractual services. And this is an increase for dedicated internet service access that was moved up. It was originally scheduled for 2022, but due to the regional dispatch, we moved it up to this year to get them set up in a more secure way. So that's for internet services. The Division of Public Works has $11,572.59 in material and supplies. This is for the increase for the Healthy Urban Tree Canopy Grant Program. It's a reimbursement grant that will we have to expend it before we get it reimbursed to us. So this will allow that, and there's an offsetting revenue. And in the Parks and Rec Department, the diving board has met its end of its life, and it was cracked and not usable. So they wanted to put in a new diving board before summer. And so they've moved monies around to capital outlay to accomplish that. And then the community development block grant, we were successful in receiving the Elm Road rehabilitation. And this is the federal share of the Elm Road, and we need to put it in the CDBG fund to expend out of it. And there's an offsetting revenue coming in from the grant. And then in the GEO bond retirement, there's an increase for bond issuance fees, which there were some monies in the bond issue, but in total it was 230,000 plus, a little over that. So we had to add an additional amount in there. And when we do bond issues, they're technically self-appropriating. So, but I like to keep this as accurate as possible. So we don't really have a choice, but we do have to increase that amount. And then the library bond retirement fund, the library's paid off, and I need to transfer the monies to another bond retirement fund, and I am transferring it to the fire station bond retirement fund. And this is going to allow us to call the bonds for the fire station in December of 2022. And then we'll have 3 years where we'll pay them off 3 years earlier, so that there will be no interest occurring on it. It's only like $30,000-$40,000 that we're saving in interest, because obviously at the end of the life, most of it is principal reduction. But every little bit helps, and the taxpayers will see a reduction in their tax levy in 2022 tax year. And then the other portion for the Butternut Pocket Park was in capital improvement, and that was an unencumbered amount, and that should have been appropriated because the project wasn't done, and it was not. So we need to appropriate that. And those are all the items that are in the transfer thus far.
Mr. Kelly, you got anything?
Yes, thank you. This is for Ms. Scott. The Pocket Park, when it was passed, it was for the total cost to be reimbursed with donation money. So how does that work here?
You know, I don't have the whole park analysis here, but those monies are, I think they were expended first. And this isn't really an additional amount over the budget. It's that we hadn't encumbered the remaining part of what was budgeted last year. And so it like washed away into the general fund carryover balance and into the capital improvement carryover balance. And we need to say, hey, we still needed those monies to complete the project as we originally planned. So there was no changes to the plan per se. It's just that because it crossed years, the budget got swept into the fund balance.
One more question, please. So this is still going to work out to be a net zero for the city?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Glassburn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question is on the police budget items that are the 66,000 combined. That may not quite be an FTE for a police officer, but that is a good portion of the way there in an FTE in other departments. Are we doing anything to offset that, or is that coming from the general fund? Where's that money coming from?
It's coming from the general fund balance, general fund balance.
Okay.
The $6,000 is really more that was needed, but we were able to move some of the utilities around. But at this time, it's really early to find pockets of money that are like that $60,000 amount. And it was, you know, an oversight by all when it was clearly in the new contract as a new item. And yes, it is $60,000. It is a large amount.
Mr. Chair, my second topic would be the library bond. So
Go ahead.
My understanding is we're not required to collect funds once it's been satisfied. So how did we end up with this money, or why did we collect it, and why didn't we just stop collecting it?
Mr. Chair, the county wants you to collect the full millage. I mean, you don't want to go back and forth, up and down. And remember, these were tumultuous times with property values and everything else. So we collected less for a while and then more for a while. And so it's been all over. So they will not get levied. So this is fine. And we usually adjust it in the last couple of years. So this is exactly what we've done in the past. But this one has an optional redemption. So I'm able to actually call it and save the interest costs.
So I'm also confused on just, I mean, assuming we are permitted to transfer this money to another purpose, it just seems odd to me that we could transfer money collected for a voted on issue and put it to anything else. I mean, the fire station levy seems like the absolute right thing to put it to, but that just strikes me as odd.
Go ahead, Director.
I understand. In actuality, there's the general obligation bond retirement fund, and these are sub-funds of the GO bond retirement fund. So any leftover monies in any of the bond retirement funds goes to the GO bond retirement fund or another bond retirement fund of that needs it. So, I mean, I could put it in the GO bond retirement fund and then take the GO bond retirement fund money and put it back, but this is a legitimate use. I did double check with our bond counsel to make sure we weren't doing anything inappropriate, which we've done this in the past, but I wanted to clarify because it had been a while. So this is a completely legitimate use.
Mr. Chair, I just have one other last line.
Go ahead.
So the bond fee increase, am I interpreting correctly that we're increasing that 160,000? Is that, and that's new money we're spending? So again, is that just coming out of the general fund? Is that coming out of bond proceeds? Does this suggest in the future when we talk about, finding extra money in bond projects that maybe we should set that aside for these types of fees? Could you tell us more about that?
Yes, I can. In general terms, the fees are actually paid for out of the proceeds from the bond issue. And so this is just grossing up the entire transaction so that we can reflect the expenditure of bond fees instead of netting them. You can't net those transactions. So it's not that, it's just there was more monies collected to pay them. So it's just grossing up the transaction rather than booking it net. And obviously the budget was done before these were sold and it was closed. So we didn't have the exact dollar amounts available at the time. So, but again, the bond transaction is self-appropriating, and there are premiums that were received that cover these costs. So it's not really additional money, it's just part of the transaction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director.
Any other questions? Okay, then at this time, so we're going to have to amend this on the floor. Is that correct? And we can just vote on it as amended in the committee? Is that correct, Mr. Gura?
Yeah, the motion would be motion to recommend approval with amendments, and then just if you can identify the amendments just for clarity. I don't think
there's just one amendment, Mr. Chair.
Which is that 60,000.
No, it's the 6,000.
The 6,000. Okay.
Correct. And Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I would like this passed so we can get it posted, the revised budget posted in our system. So I would like it passed on suspension.
Okay. So that's the $6,000 in the human resources or the police? Which one?
The police.
The police.
And it's in the amended column.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So I'll go ahead and I'll make a motion that we recommend 2021-35 with the amendment of the $6,000 in police dedicated internet service access moved up due to regional dispatch, correct? And I'll ask for a second.
Second, and aye.
Aye. Thank you. 2-0. All right. And lastly, we have 2021-36, which is an ordinance establishing a new local fiscal recovery fund as a special revenue fund to account for receipt and expenditure of federal funds as appropriated by the federal government for disbursement to municipalities in Ohio and declaring an emergency. So they give us a check yet or what?
No, Mr.
So
Chair.
we're just setting this thing up, right? Is that what you're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
This is
There's
just
no determination about how we're going to spend the money or any of that. This is just setting the fund up. Okay,
And we don't even know the exact dollar amount yet. The non-entitlement cities has not been has been calculated in final form yet, as at least as of last week. And they had taken more money out of the non-entitlement cities to add more to some of the smaller metropolitan cities. So so we don't know exactly what we're getting yet. They said it's not a significant difference, but we'll wait and see. But this is a requirement. It was for the CARES Act for them to have a separate fund. And we want a separate fund for this. It's going to, it expires. Well, we have to have the monies committed by the end of December of 2024. And then we have 2 additional years through December of 2026 to expend the dollars. So this fund will be with us for quite some time, but it's better to keep it separate. It's federal dollars and it's a significant amount, and there's going to be a lot of eyes on it. So we want to have it as its own.
any questions, Mr. Kelly? Questions from council? Okay, then I will go ahead and make a motion that we recommend 2021-36 and ask for a second.
Second, and aye.
Aye,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
if you can suspend it, that would be great. So just in case we get it in the latter part of June,
Okay,
I have a fund to put it in.
okay.
But if you can't, then, then it'll be, I guess then it's June 15th. It's in another week. So, oh, wait. Yeah,
No,
I would prefer to have it suspended just so we can get it set up and ready.
Mr. Kelly, would you be comfortable adding suspension to this, to the recommendation?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, me too. So, okay, so 2-0 with the suspension recommendation. Thank you. And that's 7:43. That's going to conclude my report right on time. So you have 2 minutes if anybody has to go to the bathroom or anything. Thank you.